The verb is probably the most important part of a Latin sentence that you're going to run into. In any sentence, you want something to happen, right? You want an action, and that's what your verb is going to give you. When you're starting out with Latin, one of the things you're going to really focus on doing is identifying which word is the verb and translating it. Then you move on to your nouns. Now, of course, as you progress, you're going to learn to read from left to right. But again, even those who do that look to that verb. So, without further ado, let's take a look at how the Latin verb system works, how a verb works in Latin. Now, there are 5 characteristics to any verb in Latin, and this video will basically focus on these 5 characteristics. Now, the first of those characteristics is person. And if you remember from any of your English classes, person refers to who's doing the action, and we refer to these as first person. That's the I or we. The second person, that's you, either singular or plural. And the third person, that's he, she, it, or, in the plural, they. All right, so every verb, when you look at it, you'll be able to know exactly who's doing the action, whether it's I or we, you, and so on. Now, along with person, the verb is also going to have number. In Latin, we have 2 particular numbers, just like we do in English. We have singular and plural, or singular or plural. That is, the verb is going to change if the subject, if the person doing the action is just one, or if it's plural. So with these 2 alone, we get 6 combinations, right? We can have first person singular, I, or first person plural, which is we. Okay? So every verb is going to have person and number. They'll also have a tense. Now, the most basic way to think of tenses is that a tense is either present, future, or past. And we're actually going to find that in Latin there's a bit more nuance to this. That is, we can have different tenses of the past. We can have past ongoing, right? I was walking, or past completed. I finished my homework. Right? But basically we have present, future, and past, although in reality there are 6 tenses in Latin. So person, number, tense. And then we have voice. There are 2 voices in Latin. If you ever take Greek, you'll find there's actually a 3rd voice involved, and that 3rd voice does show up. So as you get further on in your Latin education, things to look forward to. Someone like Virgil may sneak in another voice for you. But as you're learning Latin, there are really 2 voices to focus on. That is the active voice. Right? And the active voice, the subject, is doing the action. Right? So I hit the ball. Right? I'm doing the action, and I'm affecting something on something else. So if we have an active, we also have a passive voice. And that will be the ball is hit by me. Where the subject, the ball, is no longer doing the action, the subject is the recipient of the action. So the difference between the active and passive is really one of inverse. And then finally we have mood. And in Latin there are 3 moods. There's the indicative mood, and that's speaking of actions as facts. Right? This is the mood we use when we're telling a story, and this story can be in the present tense, right? If you're writing a novel in the present tense, you're going to use the indicative. I see the boy walking towards me. Or in the past tense, I saw the boy walking towards me. Or in the future, I will see the boy. The second mood is the imperative. And this is going to be our mood of commands, right? Hit the ball, walk the dog. Usually the subject for an imperative is going to be second person, you. It's not stated, right? We don't say, you walk the dog. We just say, walk the dog, right? So the imperative is our command. We have the indicative, facts, the imperative, commands. And then we have the subjunctive. And the subjunctive mood really refers to verbs, actions which haven't yet taken place, aren't realized in the real world, but are only thought of at the moment. Right? And so this sometimes shows us potentiality. I might do something. Right? So potentiality, wishes, and other such things. Now, if you've learned any other language which has a subjunctive, you'll know the subjunctive is used usually only in particular situations. The same is true in Latin. So don't fear the subjunctive. It shows up in things like conditional sentences, when you want to express purpose, why you're doing something. But for the most part, it will only be in very circumscribed situations. The verb mood that you're going to use most often is going to be the indicative. Now that we know that a verb is going to have these various characteristics, how does a Latin verb work? And we're going to try and do this without any actual verbs. Every verb you run into is going to have a stem. Right? And the stem is what's going on. Walking, hitting, running, whatever it might be. And then many verbs are going to have what I refer to as an infix. That is, something added onto the stem. And then they're going to have an ending. Now this ending is very, very important. The ending of every verb is going to tell you the person, the number, and the voice, for the most part. Right? So it's going to tell you who's doing it and whether they're doing the action or whether the action is being done to them. So every verb is going to have one of these endings. That's particular indicative verbs are going to have this ending, and it's going to tell you who's doing the action and whether the actions they're doing it or is being done to them. That leaves us with the stem and the infix. And the stem and the infix is going to determine the tense and the mood. Right? And there are going to be various combinations of stem and infix. Remember, there are tenses. There are 6 different tenses. So we're actually going to have multiple stems for a verb, and that, along with its infix, is going to determine whether it's present indicative or present subjunctive, whether it's a perfect, that is one of the past tenses, indicative, or perfect subjunctive. So as you learn Latin, you're going to learn various combinations of stems and infixes. But as you're starting out, the most important thing is look to that ending. It tells you a lot of information.